How the First World War created the Middle East conflicts. The Middle East saw a sea change in its political environment and the sowing of seeds of strife that continue to this day with the First World War. With the fall of the Ottoman Empire and the redrawing of borders by colonial powers, a complicated web of nationalism, ethnic conflict, and broken promises developed. In this video, we will highlight 7 key points illustrating how the war created the conditions for ongoing conflicts in the Middle East. Number 7. Collapse of the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire, which comprised a wide range of nationalities and religions and had ruled the Middle East for centuries, began to fall apart as a result of the First World War. As the war dragged on, the empire suffered heavy military losses to the Allies, which were made worse by internal discontent from several nationalist organizations. For example, the Young Turks attempted to modernize and reform the empire, but in the end they were unable to bring the disparate communities together under a single national identity. As a result of the war's escalation of already existing tensions, ethnic groups desiring autonomy such as the Arabs, Kurds, and Armenians saw uprisings and revolts. The Treaty of Sèvres, which officially destroyed the empire and redistributed its possessions among victorious powers like Britain and France, was the outcome of these tensions coming to a head in 1920. In addition to overthrowing centuries of Ottoman rule, this pact imposed regulations that frequently disregarded regional government systems and ancestral land claims. As a result, there was a power vacuum that led to intense conflict amongst different nationalist and ethnic factions for control of their respective regions. As hitherto coexisting groups started to view one another as competitors in a newly fractured political landscape, this fight set the stage for future wars. Number 6. Arbitrary borders. The Middle East has suffered significant long-term effects as a result of the arbitrary borders set by colonial countries following World War I. Sykes-Picot 1916 and other agreements define borders on maps without taking historical, tribal, ethnic, or religious relationships into account. For instance, under British mandate, Sunni Arabs, Shia Arabs, Kurds, and other ethnicities were merged into one state to become Iraq. There were intrinsic conflicts between groups with different allegiances and cultural backgrounds as a result of this disregard for local identities. The boundaries frequently split apart families and appended long-standing social structures, slicing through communities. Divisions were exacerbated when colonial governments frequently gave some ethnicities preferential treatment in military support or administrative positions. As a result, there was a patchwork of republics where marginalized groups felt cut off from central administrations that were dominated by other racial or religious groups. This dissatisfaction has played a major role in the ongoing conflicts in the region. Marginalized people have frequently turned to violence or insurgency in order to affirm their identities and rights as they continue to fight for their position within these made-up states. Number 5. Nationalism and self-determination. After centuries of imperial domination, the war sparked a strong wave of nationalism throughout the Middle East as different communities sought their own independence. Western nations promised Arab leaders during the war, most famously via the McMahon Hussein correspondence, that they would promote Arab independence in return for their help in fending off Ottoman armies. But these assurances were frequently betrayed by covert agreements like the Sykes-Picot Agreement between Western powers over post-war territorial control. Nationalist movements gained momentum in the years following World War II as people united behind the goal of creating sovereign nation-states based on racial or religious identity. Nationalist leaders arose who aimed to bring their communities together under shared banners, frequently mobilizing support by bringing up old grudges against colonial rulers or other ethnic groups. However, the pursuit of autonomy frequently resulted in rivalries between various factions within the newly established nations. Conflicting nationalist ideologies emerged, complicating national identities and generating tensions that would eventually turn violent as different groups fought for control of their respective territories. Number 4. The Balfour Declaration. The 1917 Balfour Declaration was a turning point in Jewish-Arab relations in Palestine and paved the way for further hostilities in the area. It was issued by British Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour and pledged to uphold the civil and religious rights of the existing non-Jewish communities while endorsing the creation of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. After centuries of Ottoman control, Arab leaders' desires for independence were not taken into consideration or consulted before making this pronouncement. After the war, there was a sharp rise in Jewish immigration to Palestine as a result of burgeoning Zionist hopes spurred by the declaration itself, as well as growing anti-Semitism throughout Europe. Jewish settlers and Arab locals became tense as a result of this migration because the former felt their claims to sovereignty over ancient areas were being undermined by property acquisitions. Deep-rooted grievances that have endured into modern times are a result of the contradictory promises made by colonial powers. During the 20th century, these grievances were expressed violently in conflicts over territorial claims, national identity, and self-determination, and they still have an impact on Israeli-Palestinian relations today. Number 3. Economic disruption. The Great War had a significant and far-reaching economic impact on the Middle East, causing widespread poverty that increased social tensions among different communities. In addition to seriously damaging infrastructure due to military campaigns, the conflict disrupted trade lines that were vital to the local economies. Battles fought throughout vital regions like Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq damaged or destroyed ports, railroads, and roadways. Due to cropland being taken over by the military or destroyed during conflicts, agricultural output fell significantly. This disruption caused food shortages and inflation, which impacted huge portions of the people that were already struggling under colonial control. Social unrest increased as a result of colonial authorities' mishandling of the economy, which put European interests ahead of local needs. Disenfranchised populations mobilized around issues of land ownership, labor rights, and political representation as poverty rates increased and the effects of wartime hardships compounded. Economic instability fostered an environment ripe for conflict that would manifest in various forms throughout the region's turbulent history. As different factions competed for control over scarce resources like land, water rights, and employment opportunities, this competition frequently turned violent. Number 2. Rise of sectarian tensions. Sectarian tensions in the newly constituted Middle Eastern governments increased significantly after World War I, partly as a result of colonial practices that favored some religious or ethnic groups over others. In order to keep control, colonial rulers frequently exploited pre-existing sectarian divisions. They would marginalize certain groups and give administrative or military backing to others, which bred deep-seated grievances among populations that felt left out of power structures. In Iraq, for instance, Kurdish demands for autonomy were disregarded when a Sunni monarchy was imposed over a predominantly Shiite populace by British officials. This action created tensions between the two groups from the start. Sectarian identities became politicized over antiquity, as leaders used them to gain control or mobilize support during elections or other crises. This competition for supremacy among many sects within nations resulted in violent cycles. These rivalries between sects have persisted into the modern era, and they have played a major role in both internal wars and regional tensions involving outside powers looking to exert influence over sectarian groupings that support their goals. Number 1. Legacy of violence. The bloodshed left behind by World War I has had a significant impact on current conflicts in the Middle East and continues to shape geopolitical dynamics today. This legacy is visible not only in ongoing conflicts but also in enduring animosities between different communities across borders that are shaped by colonial legacies rather than local historical realities. During the war itself, there were horrific events like the Armenian Genocide, which brought to light ethnic tensions exacerbated by wartime policies and widespread suffering from famine that affected civilian populations throughout different regions, primarily as a result of military disruptions that affected food supply chains, which were crucial during times of scarcity. Unresolved historical grievances from this period continue to resonate today as various groups compete for recognition or redress regarding past injustices. These grievances are frequently invoked by political leaders seeking legitimacy or mobilizing support amid ongoing crises affecting their constituencies today. These traumatic experiences left psychological scars on affected communities that have been passed down through generations. Furthermore, the specter of past violence looms large over efforts toward peace-building and reconciliation in an already volatile landscape marked by deep-seated mistrust among communities historically pitted against one another due to both directly and indirectly resulting from colonial policies implemented during this turbulent period marked by upheaval. New conflicts are frequently influenced by historical injustices. Many nations are still dealing with problems that have their roots in this turbulent era as a result of the conflicts that these changes encouraged. If you liked our video, please hit the like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel.